And welcome to the Full of Football podcast. I'm Austin Thomas.
I'm Brayden Dowers.
And welcome to the 10th episode this season of the Full of Football podcast. We finally reached the decade here, and we're going to be talking about the Week 12 that's upcoming and talking about everything that happened last week, all the new news, the injuries, and then we're going to get on into our predictions and what we think is going to happen for the upcoming week. So all that and more if you stay tuned to this episode of the Full of Football podcast. But without further ado, let's get on into our injury report. Alright, so to start off the injury report, we're going to go with more of a minor one here. We got Scotty Miller. He's going to be coming off IR. Now, you know, Tom Brady loves this guy for obviously suspect reasons. How do you think he impacts the team?
I think that Scotty Miller coming off the IR doesn't really move the needle too much for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but we all know that Tom Brady loves his short slot receiver white guys. That is probably the most obvious thing. I think the only thing that could be impactful about this is maybe Antonio Brown. I haven't really heard any more news on it, but since he possibly might have faked his vaccination card, I think Scotty Miller might be taking snaps away from him if that actually happened, but I've heard very conflicting things on that.
I've heard a lot of other things. I have a feeling that it's going to be something that was like true or whatnot, and then they're going to hide it and be like,
I don't think that Brown actually did that.
Although it does seem very Antonio Brown.
Yeah, but it seems like something he'd do. But I think he did.
Yeah, that's probably why they came up with the,
That's the only reason why I see Scotty Miller actually getting snaps, like getting significant snaps, and actually.
I could see him getting significant snaps. I couldn't see him getting significant targets unless that, because he definitely can be out there in 4 wide receiver sets.
Yeah.
Next injury we got Jordan Howard is going to be doubtful for the upcoming game, most likely out. He's expected to be out for the Eagles game. He had a knee sprain in the last game, took him out partway through. Now, you were heading into this game, Miles Sanders was coming back, and nobody expected Jordan Howard to do anything. He had 10 carries in his limited time. You think maybe when he comes back, he's going to get that similar role, or do you think this injury kind of pushes him back to where he was?
Again, it's another little minor injury. I don't really think that it's going to be moving the needle too much. I mean, the Eagles still have Miles Sanders. Boston Scott's still there. Obviously Miles Sanders is definitely the number 1 running back there. The Eagles' running game has been absolutely insane over the past couple weeks. And Howard has been a key part of that, but I really don't think that this is going to majorly impact them too much.
But specifically for Jordan Howard, do you think this impacts his placement on the team?
Not really. I think that he's still going to have the same kind of role, being that power goal line running back.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hoping, the same thing. He's been a good story this year, kind of coming back from where everyone saw him as, he's out of the league.
Yeah.
But came back, had a pretty good season so far. Hopefully he can return back to where he was. Next injury here, we got Eric Ebron is now expected to miss extended time. That was the timetable they gave, extended time, due to his knee injury. Now, in his place, Pat Freiermuth. He has been very good for the Steelers all year. Do you think that he's going to get more targets, or do you think those targets are going to go more to the wide receivers?
I definitely think that Freiermuth. He's been one of, if not the best Steelers pass catcher this year because, I believe Claypool's out now, or has been out.
Oh, yeah.
And Juju obviously is out for the rest of the year. The Steelers, we know Ben, his arm is completely shot now, it seems, so he seems to be doing nothing but taking checkdowns. So I think Freiermuth definitely gets even more snaps, especially with Ebron. He has had a drop problem over the past 2 years, so I think that Freiermuth definitely gets more targets.
Now, Freiermuth did have that big fumble at the end of that Detroit Lions game, and that kind of, people thought maybe his stock was going to fall there. Last week he kind of showed back up. He got
even in that
few receptions,
he was still really good.
Yeah, he got 6 receptions, I think.
Yeah, he's a productive receiver.
He gets the receptions. He's definitely some guy that you have to watch out for if you're on the defense, and he can take a guy away from one of those wide receivers if you have a guy like maybe Ray McCloud can go deep or something,
Maybe.
Get one of those big plays just because they're kind of focused on stopping the check down. Then again, it's Ben Roethlisberger, so maybe he won't get it there, but you never know. It at least allows you the opportunity to risk it. All right, next injury here, we got a bigger one here. We got Adam Troutman, the young tight end for the Saints. He is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with an MCL sprain. Now, I mean, up until this point, he hasn't really broken out or done anything big. It was kind of like last season, everyone was expecting Blake Jarwin kind of to go off and kind of become productive. He got injured obviously earlier on, but it was kind of the same expectations for Adam Troutman this year, and he really hasn't done much. Now, obviously that might be due to not having Jameis Winston back at quarterback, not having Drew Brees at quarterback. It also might be because of the lack of receiver options, and so everyone's focused on him, blah, blah, blah. There are so many different reasons here. Who are they going to throw to? Who are the Saints going to throw to?
Alvin Kamara and the Chipmunks, baby. I think Alvin Kamara is that offense. I don't think that the Saints are a good football team without Alvin Kamara. I think they can get by with just him, but losing Troutman definitely does hurt them. But in reality, we've seen them be completely fine without anybody else besides Alvin Kamara. But when they lose Alvin Kamara, that team is not good.
And is Kamara playing this week?
I believe so.
I thought so. Either way, yeah, Troutman going to be out, so I mean that team almost entirely dependent on Alvin Kamara at this point. No Jameis Winston, so you're relying on okay. In all honesty, Trevor Siemian hasn't been bad.
No,
he hasn't been bad.
Okay. I mean, he beat Tom Brady.
He did, and he's had some good games. He may not. I mean, last game he had a pretty good game, put up 29 for the Saints, although they got smoked by the Eagles.
I mean, most of that was in garbage time.
Fair, but some of it was earlier on, and he didn't really throw as many interceptions. He didn't turn over the ball as much as you were looking at whenever you're getting blown out by a team. Then again, it was the Eagles, so I don't know how much of that happens.
Yeah.
But still, he hasn't looked bad this season, and that's good from a team like that. Next injury or injuries, or not injuries, but like kind of injuries. We have Zach Wilson, who's coming back from an injury. He's going to be back after his couple weeks of absence here. He had Mike White replace him that first game. The second game it was John Johnson. The third game it was back to Mike White. And then the fourth game it was Joe Flacco. Well, this Jets quarterback situation just got real weird real quick. So Zach Wilson is going to be coming back to play. He is starting for the Jets against the Texans this week. But Mike White and Joe Flacco just went on the COVID-19 reserve list, which means that John Johnson from the practice squad is going to get called up to become the backup QB just in case Zach Wilson re-injures himself. Talk about a crazy QB situation where you have no good QBs.
The Jets are a joke. That's about all you really have to say about this. I mean, Mike White, what a legend. An absolute legend. Comes out, has that insane game against the Bengals, says he should be the number one pick, and then gets absolutely shit on by the Bills.
Yeah, he hasn't had, a great career. He had the one good game and then the one bad game, and now he's on the COVID list.
Yep.
So, that's how life rolls for some quarterbacks.
I still think he's better than Zach Wilson.
I guess that's something we might end up seeing. No, we won't end up seeing because he's on the COVID list.
Nope.
But John Johnson, though.
That's true.
Now, do you think John Johnson is better than Zach Wilson?
No.
Okay, fair. But he did have a good game. His one good game. Was it not?
That was against the Colts.
Okay. The Colts, well, that was before they were good. Yeah. All right, next injury here. We got a big injury. Kind of big. It's a big injury on a not-so-big player. You got Jamal Agnew now out for the season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he was the kick returner for them, and he had that big kick return for that one touchdown, that one game that nobody can remember anyways. Arizona Cardinals, yeah, that's who it was. Still remember watching that, but didn't remember who it was against. But either way, Jamal Agnew has been, effective in the passing game. He's gotten a couple catches each game. He's out there every game and he's returning those kicks. So that's a big part of that offense, and the reason why they haven't scored 0 points every game. So seeing him going out like this, it's tough for a guy like Jamal Agnew, but it's something that the Jaguars are gonna have to work around now.
Yeah, especially when they've already lost DJ Chark and a host of other receivers on that offense. For them to lose another guy that kind of did step up into a pretty solid role on the offense at that wide receiver position, for him to be out sucks for him, sucks for the Jaguars, but overall I think it's kind of just a...
I mean, yeah, the Jaguars aren't going anywhere this year, so it's not like he was going to make a difference in the overall scheme of the NFL this year, but still sucks. Anyway, next injury here, we got Justin Fields bruised his ribs in last game, which benched him for the rest of the game, put Andy Dalton in. He didn't do well. And then this week for the Thanksgiving game, Andy Dalton is officially going to be starting against the Detroit Lions. Ooh.
I'm just going to say that the rookie quarterbacks outside of Mac Jones are extremely fragile. Like, it's ridiculous how fragile these guys are right now.
I mean, especially for, like, running quarterbacks. Like, you see Trey Lance, you've seen Justin Fields, Zach Wilson. The only guy that hasn't gotten injured is Trevor Lawrence, but he's been terrible. Well, you were saying outside of Mac Jones, so I wasn't including him. So, the only guy outside of Mac Jones that hasn't gotten injured is Trevor Lawrence, but he's basically been injured by how bad he has been this year.
Yeah.
So, does he still have the highest missed throw percentage?
Who?
Lawrence. I would guess so. I mean, he was terrible to start the year. I'm guessing he's still pretty bad.
The Prince of Football.
Nothing has gone his way this year or the Jags' way, but either way, Justin Fields, he hadn't looked too bad in the last couple of weeks. I mean, he kind of picked things up. He had the one big game a couple weeks ago.
Even though they still lost.
They did lose, but he's still, he's been showing progression. Yeah. That's what you want from a quarterback that you drafted like that. But
I think once they get rid of Matt Nagy, that guy is going to flourish.
Mm-hmm. And there were reports recently that Matt Nagy could be fired after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So that would be a great happy Thanksgiving for all Bears fans. Because if you like Matt Nagy, you probably don't watch football. I have watched plenty of Bears games. Nobody likes Matt Nagy.
Outside of, like, Packers or Vikings or Lions.
I mean, even as a Packers fan, I feel bad for the Bears. I'm not supposed to feel bad for the Bears, but with Matt Nagy, it makes me feel bad for the Bears.
You'd like to have a good...
rivalry, you know?
You'd like to be competitive.
Because Bears-Packers is one of the biggest rivalries in all of football.
Yeah, it really has.
And just, these past few years, the Bears have been terrible. And, I mean, part of that's been the QB problem, but, I mean, I think Fields is good enough that all he needs is a good quarterback, and the rest of the team around him is good enough.
Yeah.
As long as he's got the right play caller behind him. And I think once you fire Nagy, he could really do well. I mean, didn't they have a game where Matt Nagy was on COVID list and then they did pretty good?
Yeah, that was the game against the 49ers, and that's when Fields really broke out and actually had a couple really nice scramble kind of plays. Like, he even had a couple nice throws, but...
And although on social media, or maybe it was somewhere else, but Matt Nagy has said that he hasn't received any word that he would be fired after Thanksgiving. Now, again, I don't see why you would tell your head coach that you're going to be fired before you play your last game. So it wouldn't surprise me if he gets fired after the game. Although, he could stick around if the Bears front office isn't very smart.
Yeah.
No,
I think that the Bears lose that game, and then Nagy's gone. It's kind of like the Patricia situation last year when Houston won that game.
Oh, yeah.
And Patricia just left.
Yeah, he's going to be off the radar in a bit. He did pretty good under Andy Reid back when he was in Kansas City, and then he switched, and did not look good. Anyway, Andy Dalton's going to be starting against Detroit. We'll see how he fares, but under Matt Nagy, we'll have to see.
Yep.
Next injury here, we got Michael Carter is going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks with a low ankle sprain. Now, this is a big hit for the Jets. He's been one of the few bright spots for them this year, and going up against the Texans, you could have seen a pretty big game out of him. But going out 2 to 3 weeks now after his injury last week, that's tough for them. You think Tevin Coleman's going to be able to step into a similar role, or do you think it's kind of going to go like the rest of their team?
think it's gonna go splat just like the rest of their team. I mean, Tevin Coleman's an okay running back at this point in his career. He was decent on the Falcons as a number 2 behind Devontae Freeman. Was okay. I mean, he was serviceable in San Francisco for I think 2 years.
I think so.
And then this year for the Jets, he really hasn't done too much. I mean, Michael Carter's been pretty solid. He's been one of the few bright spots on that offense. So for him to go out sucks for him, sucks for the Jets, but it just goes further into the lullness of the Jets season.
Yeah, and I think really the only thing that you could say might win the Jets a singular game would be Elijah Moore from the rest of the season.
Yeah.
He's been the only guy that you're looking at, and he could have a good game,
Yeah.
and that's a big could. Like you saw last week, that's the only way they win a game from here on out. Or if somehow some team releases like Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa, and they both sign with the Jets because they want to be on a team together, maybe.
No.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not going to happen. But then the Jets might win 2 games.
Maybe.
Either way, next and our final injury here, we got Tyron Smith, not injured. He's going to be back against the
Raiders.
Raiders, yeah, the Raiders, the most forgettable team in the NFL. That isn't even terrible. Tyron Smith is going to be back for the Cowboys, and that's going to be a big plus for them. They really missed him last week when they were playing the Chiefs.
Yeah, if your offensive line is bad against the Chiefs' defensive line, then there's a massive problem. La'el Collins was absolutely atrocious in that game.
Now, to be fair, it is Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a good defensive lineman in the NFL. He's a good defensive lineman.
Defensive tackle. He's a horrible defensive end.
Okay, yeah. I would agree with that statement. But still, he got 3.5 sacks in that game.
Yeah,
and
did nothing.
Frank Clark did nothing. So the point here is that Chris Jones is a good sack. So it's not that disappointing to see him being the one to do it. If it were Frank Clark that got 3.5 sacks, that would be a problem.
Yeah.
But especially now that you're getting Tyron Smith back, I don't expect to see any situation like that coming up this week against the Raiders.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to...
Max
Crosby. He's good. He's good, I'll give you that. But he's not Chris Jones. He's not going to get 3.5 sacks. And especially with Tyron Smith back, that is going to be huge for the Cowboys. I see them faring much better than they did against the Chiefs.
Yep.
Anyway, with that is going to close out our injury report. So let's get on into the new news. All right, and for the new news here, we're going to start off with something recently that just happened. Well, actually, quite a bit of this is recent, like in the last 2 hours or so. First off, the New York Football Giants have just fired Jason Garrett, and it's expected that Browns legend Freddie Kitchens steps up to be the play caller for the Giants.
What a joke of an organization. You go from bad to just still being bad. I mean, I don't think that you get any better or any worse. These are these were the 2 coaches, I believe in the same year, both in 2019 got fired because they were just so bad as head coaches.
Yeah.
And just being bad offensive play callers, and I don't know why the Giants decided hiring Jason Garrett was a good idea in the first place, or hiring Freddie Kitchens. I mean, Dave Gettleman, I think, is the next guy out the door there. But this really doesn't do anything for the Giants. I think that they still suck either way. I think that when Jason Garrett was out with COVID for at least one game, Freddie Kitchens did step into that role.
I want to say that was last year.
As the play caller, I believe it was.
Okay.
And the Giants did look a little bit better on offense, but I don't think that there's any sustainability there.
Something that I usually see with coaching situations is, you'll see a head coach leave, and then a new head coach will step in to a limited role. And if it's a limited role, like a 1-game absence, you'll see that coach put all they have into that game. It'll kind of relight a fire. But if you see them going into multiple games, that fire decreases. If they know they have that job, they don't want to show off. And I feel like that's going to be the same with Freddie Kitchens here. You're going to see him, maybe he'll have 1 or 2 good games, and then it's going to go back to the normal Giants. Yeah, I'm not saying they'll win these first 2 games, but he'll at least make it closer because he cares about these games. Because those first 2 games are what, the coaches think matters.
Yep.
Even though, in the reality of things, it's those 5th, 6th games when you start getting into that real stretch. Those are the games that matter when it comes to determining if a head coach is good or not. You know, the first game of the season, everyone's fired up.
Yep.
Everyone's going to be putting out their best game. You get into week 7, if you're still out there, you haven't had your bye week yet, and you're week 7, you don't have that kind of fire on you. So that's basically running off of is what can you do as a head coach. And so I think, again, Freddie Kitchens, he's going to be coming in, going to have a couple quick weeks. But, you know, end of the season, week 17, we're going to have to see what he does. Even if the Giants are eliminated, that's going to be a big game for him to prove, you know, that he can be a sustainable head coach.
Yeah, he's an offensive coordinator.
He is, yeah, but
Not the head coach.
Isn't he going to be switched up?
No, it's Joe Judge.
I thought Joe Judge got fired earlier.
No.
Was it not? Well, okay, you know what? Forget about what I say. I mean, okay, my point still stands about the couple of games.
He's just being the offensive coordinator.
Fair, yeah. Was it was Joe Judge that called the... I thought that after that practice fight, remember? The fight for the Giants? I thought that Joe Judge had gotten fired after that.
No.
Okay. He didn't?
No.
Okay. All right, anyways, next piece of news here, we got Philip Lindsay, just recently released by the Texans. So they're going to be, you know, without Philip Lindsay heading into this season, people thought was going to be, you know, a serviceable backup guy. He was pretty good for the Broncos when he was with them, but he wasn't, you know, anything stellar. He could step into a role if he needed. And then he came into the Texans and did nothing. Now, is that because of their offensive line, or is that because of he just sucks?
That's because the Texans are the worst ran organization in all of football. I mean, Philip Lindsay, he's a serviceable running back, I think, would be a great pickup for either the Chiefs or the Seahawks. But again, like, it was just a bad situation for him, especially when the Texans decided to just sign, like, 30 guys. I mean, that team has absolutely no identity. And I mean, I think it's best for both teams, or for both the Philip Lindsay and the Texans, because Philip Lindsay obviously just needed to get out of there, just like most of that roster, and the Texans just need a tank so they can get better draft picks.
Fair point. All right, next news here, we got Cortland Sutton signing a massive, well, not massive, it was a 4-year extension.
Yeah.
A 4-year extension with the Broncos here, so he will be sticking around with them. Now, you were heading into the season, he was coming off a torn ACL, so you didn't know how he was really going to perform, but he showed that he's been a good receiver so far. I think that's a good signing for the Broncos there. Definitely, he's going to be part of the future. Now, when it comes to that quarterback situation, who knows? Who knows? That's something we're going to have to find out, but I think Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, going to be a good duo for years.
I think that duo, along with Tim Patrick, who also just got a massive extension, I believe that was like 3 years, $38 million.
Yeah.
I seeing the Broncos lock up that receiving core, I think that's really good for them. Now, again, you got to fire Vic Fangio if you actually want to maximize that potential that you have in that receiving core, maximize the potential even maybe possibly out of Drew Lock, or just any quarterback that you decide to draft to maximize Javonte Williams. Like, they have the pieces on offense and on defense. It's just, are they going to be able to maximize that potential? And I think locking up Cortland Sutton is going to help them get to that point.
And I think something that was a little surprising to me when you mentioned Drew Lock is thinking back to earlier in the season, they drafted Javonte Williams with the intentions that Drew Lock was going to be their future quarterback, and they haven't ridden that out at all. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's kind of ruined their situation a little bit. Like, they didn't even give him they gave him a chance last year. They gave him a chance the year before.
I mean, there really wasn't a chance for him in 2020. I mean, you have a COVID year with his second-year quarterback, and then you have literally more than half of the roster getting injured, put on IR, being out for all of the season. I mean, Albert Okuebenon was out for the entire year. Cortland Sutton was out for the entire year. I believe Tim Patrick was, he was hurt for a bit. I believe, everybody hurt at some point or another. Von Miller was out for the entire year. I mean, the Broncos were probably the most injury-riddled team, and Drew Lock was just put in an absolutely horrible situation. Then you ask him to miss a game and you have Kendall Hilton have to come in on 24 hours, on less than 24 hours notice. So I think if you actually give Drew Lock a chance with a competent offense and a competent head coach and a competent offensive coordinator that's not Pat Maroon, you're going to have, I think, a decent Broncos offense.
And again, before the season, they didn't plan on Teddy Bridgewater starting. I think that was a bad decision because the Broncos, they kind of thought they could compete. And at that point, when you're on that brink, and Drew Lock was looking as good as he did in the preseason, I think you got to go with the younger guy in that situation because
torched the Vikings.
You need to care about your future. Mm-hmm. When you're a team that's on the brink of making the playoffs, they weren't winning the championship.
No.
They weren't even making the conference championship. There was no shot. They maybe made the AFC divisional. Maybe if you won the wild card game.
Yeah.
You weren't beating the Chiefs. Still aren't beating the Chiefs at this point. I mean, they aren't going to do that. I don't understand why they didn't start playing Drew Lock. Try and get him, to be that guy. You have that new team. You have Jerry Jeudy, going to be playing good. You have Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Noah Fant, and then you have Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, who are much better than Phillip Lindsay, who they had last year. That duo is so good together. You've seen that this year. They've been going off of each other. That's going to be a huge option for Drew Lock, and getting him involved, I think. Again, it's a missed opportunity for them. Maybe they can still salvage that later this season. You think so?
I know this is kind of going on, like continuing on this little tangent that we're going on, but definitely, like, there's no reason. I love Teddy Bridgewater, but there's absolutely no reason to play him when it's obvious that at this stage in his career, he is literally just a bridge quarterback. Like, everybody knows that he's not the quarterback that's going to take you to a Super Bowl. He's not going to do that. So what's the point in paying him when you know that there is at least a potential that Drew Lock could possibly be that guy? I mean, you know what you're going to get out of Teddy Bridgewater. You don't know what you're going to get out of Drew Lock. Take that uncertainty. You got to take that risk, especially with a young group of guys. That you can possibly build around Drew Lock. So that's where I'll just leave it.
Yeah. All right. So next news here, we have a signing. And well, let's start with the release first. The Tennessee Titans have released Adrian Peterson. Now, a couple weeks ago in my fantasy football league, I saw a trade go down where somebody had traded away a Keenan Allen for a mix of different running backs, which included Adrian Peterson, as if he was going to be a good running back. And I thought, why in the world would you do that? And I was only proven right today. And still to this day, I don't understand why you would trade Keenan Allen for a combination of, I can't remember what it was, but it was Adrian Peterson and some other running back of a similar caliber. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. It still doesn't. But, I mean, that just goes to prove Adrian Peterson, he was too old. He's old. He isn't the same guy.
Yeah, Titans just didn't really give him an opportunity. I still think that he's likely to re-sign back with the practice squad. But Titans are probably just going to go with more young guys there.
I think that's a good thing too, because you also need a backup running back for the next few years when Derrick Henry does come back. You need a guy, just in case he does get injured again.
Yeah.
Or just for a small amount of time, you got to have that guy just come in there, give him a bit of rest. Darrington Evans thought was going to be that guy. He got injured, so I mean, you're not really looking at him, but you got to have that third guy also.
Yeah.
Always got to have that third guy. That third guy is a lot more important than a lot of people give. And then with the release of Adrian Peterson, though, the Titans did sign Golden Tate to their team. So Golden Tate, he had a couple good years. What do you think he's going to have as an impact on this team?
I really like Golden Tate. I don't know why he wasn't signed this offseason. I thought for his role in the Giants offense, he was a pretty good receiver for his role. And I believe, it was the Lions before that. He was great in Detroit, and then before that in Seattle. As being a Seahawks fan, I loved him in Seattle. I mean, obviously he had his problems with Russell Wilson and the conspiracy theories there. But I think that he's a great signing for the Titans. I think that if the Chiefs picked him up, that would have been a great option for them as well. He's definitely a welcome addition to that offense with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones if he ever plays, which seems to be extremely unlikely.
They're going to get a week out from when he's supposed to come back and say, he's not going to come back. And then they'll do the same thing week after week after week.
It's rinse and repeat for Julio Jones. But I think that Golden Tate is definitely a good receiver. It's just a matter of can Mike Vrabel in that offense use him correctly. Because we've seen that with a lot of receivers this year. Like Odell Beckham didn't really do much. Granted, it was only his first game. But the Chiefs really haven't done anything with Josh Gordon. There's been a couple other wide receivers that have been signed mid-season. And like we've seen this in the past is where these star receivers come back or get released and then they join a new team mid-season. And they really don't do too much.
No.
And it's like, I think Golden Tate has the potential to maybe break that mold, but at the same time, it's probably likely that he ends up with maybe 3 catches for 17 yards for the next 4 weeks, and then he gets cut.
Before we finish out the new news, I would like to mention that Chiefs-Broncos, the game was moved to Sunday night, so be aware of that game. That game is now Sunday night. And the Seahawks versus the 49ers was flexed to 4:25 on that day, so do be aware. 4:25 Central Time, right? Central Time.
No, 3:25 Central Time.
4:25 Eastern. So back to the 3 o'clock games. That's what we call it, Central Time. So again, be aware of that. Also, some other scheduled changes here. We got the Christmas game is going to be Las Vegas Raiders versus the Cleveland Browns, and the New England Patriots versus the Indianapolis Colts.
That's going to be a great game.
So I think New England Indianapolis is going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be an insanely good game that Saturday.
All right, but with that will close out our new news. So let's get on into our breakouts of the week. All right, and for our breakouts of the week, we're going to start off with our quarterbacks here, and I got quarterback who did terrible last week, who you're probably not expecting, but it's going to be Matt Ryan versus Jacksonville. Now, my logic behind this, Matt Ryan is coming into this game. His team still isn't that bad, record-wise. It's not good, but, for the Atlanta Falcons, it's not that bad, and that's been in part because he's been able to get it to, guys like Kyle Pitts and Cordero Patterson, who will play. I believe Cordero's coming back. Cordero Patterson and Kyle Pitts will be playing against Jacksonville. Jacksonville has a terrible defense, and you're looking at this game, and everyone thinks Matt Ryan's going to suck just because of last game. Last game, that was a tough game for them. You're looking at that. That was a good defense. They're not facing that same defense. They're facing Jacksonville. Jacksonville, they stuffed Buffalo, but that was because it was Josh Allen versus Josh Allen. Josh Allen just wanted to sack Josh Allen and kill Josh Allen as much as Josh Allen wanted to do. But either way, that's not going to be happening this game. Matt Ryan will have the freedom to check it down to every single person he can. And then, maybe occasionally he'll hit Russell Gage or someone like that, a little bit deeper, maybe get, 15 yards, get a couple chunk plays here and there. But I think Matt Ryan will be able to work through this Jacksonville defense, which has not been good this year.
Yeah, not really too much to add there. I think Matt Ryan is kind of due for a bounce-back game. Yeah. He looked good. He won Offensive Player 2 weeks ago against the Saints, I believe.
I thought it was 3, but...
Anyways, Matt Ryan has looked good recently outside of that last game where they got absolutely shelled. Jacksonville is obviously just, again, they're a joke. So I think Matt Ryan will have a decent game.
Yeah. All right, and who's your quarterback?
I got Taylor Heineke versus my Seahawks. I know that I'm wearing a Tennessee Titans jersey, but I am a Seahawks fan. Taylor Heineke looked absolutely stellar against the Carolina Panthers. He's been looking good every other week. He looked really good against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. I think that he's going to build off that. Seahawks are also without Trey Brown for the rest of the season, which hurts my soul because he has been our best cornerback and has probably been the most underrated cornerback of the season. And I think that Heineke is going to be picking on the Seattle corners, Sidney Jones and DJ Reed, who is also going to be coming off of a not that significant of a knee injury. I think that Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams really aren't going to be able to do too much either against Scary Terry. I don't know. I just think that Heineke's probably going to go off against the Seattle defense that has no motivation whatsoever.
Now, I can see what you're saying there, but Heineke has had a couple good weeks now. It's starting to kind of wear off on him.
I'd say he's building up even more.
Okay.
I'd say he had an even better game last week.
He did, but I feel like he's going to fall off eventually. It's almost certain that eventually he will fall off. He won't be as good as he has been these last 2 weeks.
I really don't think that he's had a bad game this year, though.
He hasn't, you're right, but he also hasn't had, okay.
He's been a good quarterback.
He's been a good quarterback. But the thing that I think here is I think the football team is going to go more with running the ball. This game, you're looking at that team, and you do see Jamal Adams, and how he hasn't been great, but it's still Jamal Adams. You can't take him out of the equation. I hear you laughing just because you've seen him blow coverage before this season.
No, I've seen him.
I've
also seen Ken Norton misutilize him on defense on the run. Like, he's not blitzing at all this year, and it's infuriating to watch. Antonio Gibson, just by looking off of my fantasy team, has caused me incremental amounts of pain. He's had a couple good games, but still nothing too much. I really think that the Seattle run defense has gotten unlucky, like, again, going up against Derrick Henry. Everybody said that their run defense was absolutely atrocious, when in reality, last year was actually pretty solid. And then this year, I think they stopped Jonathan Taylor week 1. They've stopped some other pretty noticeable running backs. I think Brian Monet, I think Al Woods, I think Poona Ford, and Darrell Taylor. I think it's a decent defensive line. Carlos Dunlap has been bad this year. Kerry Hyder really hasn't done too much either. I think Bobby Wagner's still pretty good. Jordan Brooks, whatever, meh. Not a big Jordan Brooks fan. But he is solid in the run defense, so I don't really think that Antonio Gibson's going to be able to do too much, but it's just, I more think that pass coverage is going to be atrocious.
Now the thing that I'm thinking here is you're looking at the football team and they're trying to find ways to win games. Yeah. They want to win games. I think they realize that people think of them, especially the Seahawks. The Seahawks are going to focus on that passing game this week. That's probably what they're working on in practice all the time. Work on defending the pass. And once you get to that game, the football team is going to try and run the ball more often, and that will throw the Seahawks off guard because they haven't been practicing that all week. That's what they've been okay at this season. So they feel, we can put that on the back burner. You're going to be looking at, and it's going to show up this week. It's going to show up that they didn't work on that. And you're going to see Antonio Gibson. I have him as actually my breakout running back of the week because they won't be ready for him to be going and running it as many times as I think he will.
Again, I just think that Heineke's, doesn't matter how much Pete Carroll wants to work on pass coverage, this pass coverage is just so bad. It doesn't matter if you put 5,000 hours into trying to make Sidney Jones, DJ Reed, Ugo Amadi, Marquise Blair's out for the rest of the year, Ugo Amadi, and Ryan Neal. It doesn't matter how much you want to work with them. The schemes that Carroll and Norton are coming up with are absolutely just atrocious. When you have 3 receivers on one side and you only have 1 cornerback on that side, it doesn't really matter. The pass game is going to find success. But I do think that Antonio Gibson could definitely break out if we somehow stop them in the pass game.
So, particularly, I'm not saying that Heineke is going to do bad. I don't think your pass coverage is going to be great. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that they're going to focus on the passing game, and in that case, they will forget about stopping the run.
That's fair.
So while Heineke might still do well, I think Antonio Gibson will do very well. But who is your running back breakout?
Javonte Williams against the Chargers.
Okay.
The Chargers have arguably the worst run defense in the league. Jerry Tillery is absolutely horrible. So bad. Javonte's been really good this year. But I think that this is going to be him cementing himself as an elite running back in the league. Again, Chargers have absolutely atrocious run defense. Broncos are kind of playing a big game. The AFC is a complete mess right now.
Yeah.
So, there's definitely a scenario where the Broncos could still just sneak into the playoffs somehow.
If they play Drew Lock.
I mean, even with Teddy Bridgewater, there
yeah.
is some way that the Broncos could sneak into the playoffs this year because the AFC is just such a mess. But I think that Pat Maroon and this Broncos offense, they're going to focus on handing the rock to Javonte, and I think that he just goes off.
All right, so now let's get on to our wide receivers here. I have the one, the only, Darnell Mooney versus Detroit. Now, Detroit has been terrible this year. There's no way to put it. They've been terrible. Darnell Mooney, these past couple of weeks, has been on fire. And now Allen Robinson is expected to be out for this upcoming game, and it's Detroit, and he's been doing well these past few games. Everything is pointing in the direction of Darnell Mooney, except Andy Dalton. Now, the thing here is that what we've heard is that there's a potential that Matt Nagy gets fired after this game. In that case, it might light a fire under him, or they might start leaning on, more the offensive coordinator than Matt Nagy. And in that case, I feel there is a good chance that they start having better play calls, allowing Mooney to get open. So in that case, I feel Darnell Mooney is going to be a superstar this week. He is going to have a monster week because, Detroit.
I could also see Darnell Mooney being absolutely atrocious. Like, you're coming into this game building off of all that stuff. Now you don't have Justin Fields, who has been feeding you the ball and throwing it into extremely tight windows that Andy Dalton cannot throw into.
But Andy Dalton still threw it to him.
Okay, and then you have Allen Robinson out, who is going to now Darnell Mooney's forced into that number one position.
But it's Detroit.
He's the main target on offense now without all the attention on Allen Robinson. Yes, it is Detroit. I think that their defense is going to play up to their potential. Dan Campbell brings out the best in that team every single week. I'm serious. I really like Dan Campbell. I think he's a great guy.
I like Dan Campbell too, but it's still Detroit, and Detroit, they just don't have the talent.
They have a decent enough defense to stop what is an absolutely atrocious Bears offense.
I wouldn't even argue that. No. But your wide receiver,
Cooper Kupp versus the Las Vegas Raiders now, even though
you mean Amari Cooper?
Not Cooper Kupp. Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper. I think that he's going to go off against his former team in the Las Vegas Raiders. We've seen him go up against the Raiders in the past. He was great in his first revenge game. I mean, John Gruden obviously isn't there anymore, but I still think that Amari has a little bit of a grudge against the Raiders for trading him away, just that organization. The Raiders secondary, not good. They lost Damon Arnett to pointing a gun at the camera and telling people that he's going to kill them.
So is Amari Cooper going to play?
I'm not 100%.
He's unvaccinated, and he popped up on the COVID list for last game. I don't think he's playing.
I think he is playing. I saw that all reports were that he was going to play. I saw that on Tuesday.
I just see that everyone's mad that he is unvaccinated.
Tragic.
It says he was out 2 games.
Rip.
He's already been ruled out for Thursday. So I would argue that he's not going to break out this week. I have a pretty good case that he's not going to break out. Just like he has a pretty good case of COVID-19.
I changed my prediction. Michael Gallup's going to break out. I think one of the Cowboys receivers is going to have an absolutely insane game. I'll happily change that to. I completely forgot. Okay, fine. Michael Gallup's going to.
We'll say Michael Gallup because he's the only receiver on that team now.
And the Raiders again. I mean, everything that I say still stands. Michael Gallup is going to have a great game.
And Cooper and Lamb are both out though.
Yep.
So that's going to help his stock.
Sure.
Okay. Tight ends now. Preseason, early in the season, not preseason. Early in the season, one of the best tight ends in football, Dawson Knox. Last week, I had him as a disappointment player. This week, I have him as my breakout player. New Orleans has not looked good. They lit up 40 to Philadelphia. And the Bills are better than Philadelphia, even though they didn't show that last week. The Indianapolis Colts have been very good recently.
Bills are frauds.
The Bills still have talent,
They're
though.
frauds.
They have talent. They are a playoff team. They are a playoff team.
Maybe.
And I would say almost certainly a playoff team. I haven't seen anything. Yes, they have made they've had some bad games.
Of the season, it's not getting easier for them.
I'm not saying it's getting easier. I think their talent. They've had a couple bad games, and I think that they aren't a top team, but they are a top 7 team in the AFC. And in that case, that is better than what the Eagles, I think, are. The Eagles aren't that good. I think they had a good week against New Orleans. But I also think that Dawson Knox starts to get more involved this week against that New Orleans defense because, you looked at him earlier in the season. He's now coming back. He's a couple games back from injury now. I think he's getting more back into the flow of playing that football and getting back to that rapport with Josh Allen. You're going to see Josh Allen starting to get more back to being comfortable with Dawson Knox, start throwing it to him a little bit more along with the other wide receivers on that team. Because, again, they don't run the ball, so you don't have to worry about them running the ball. So he's going to throw it more to Dawson Knox. They have okay running backs, but
I really don't have too much to add on that. I just think that the Bills' offense is too one-dimensional. I could see them. I mean, on paper they should definitely win this game, but at the same time, I think that the Saints' defense is solid enough. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore, Malcolm Jenkins, decent defensive line with Cam Jordan. I mean, I could see Dawson Knox going either way, but I think that he's going to be a pretty neutral factor in the game.
Okay, but your tight end, Mark Andrews, now...
Let's make sure that he's actually going to be playing this week.
Oh, I have him on fantasy. I know he is.
Okay, perfect. Mark Andrews, I think, is going to abuse the Cleveland Rams and... The Cleveland
Rams? Yes. What world are you on?
The Cleveland Browns. He's going to absolutely abuse their linebacking core.
Did you join Marvel or something and find an alternate universe?
Yes. I think that he's going to abuse the Browns' linebacking core. The Browns they're a mess right now. That locker room, I would not want to be a part of it. Kevin Stefanski, one coach of the year last year. He shouldn't have. It should have been Ron Rivera because I really don't think that he's that great of a coach. Obviously, on the offensive side, it's just been abysmal, and I don't think that their defense is great outside of Myles Garrett.
And yeah, I think I would like to add on that. Mark Andrews has been targeted tons of times in these last few games. He's grown to be, one of the biggest options for Lamar Jackson, especially with Marquise Brown is out. But Marquise Brown will be back, I believe.
When everybody is dropping the ball outside of Mark Andrews, I think Jackson's kind of forced to look his way.
And he's also getting open too. That's a big thing when it comes to targets. But either way, that's going to close up our breakouts of the week. So let's get on into our disappointment players. All right, and now on into our disappointment players. Starting off with quarterback here, I got Ryan Tannehill versus New England. New England had a pretty bad defense. Has a pretty good defense. They're a pretty bad opponent to go up against whenever you're a quarterback. And based off the week Tannehill had last week against the Texans, that's going to be tough against New England. I don't see him, getting much better. Obviously, he's not going to throw 4 picks again. I think that's pretty obvious.
I think he throws 5.
But New England is such a good defense right now, and they have been on fire recently, whereas the Titans just lost to the Texans. Tannehill is not looking great, so I feel Tannehill is kind of going to falter here.
The Titans are the weirdest team in the NFL. They lose to the Jets, they lose to the Texans, and then they go out and absolutely obliterate the Chiefs, and then they win against the Bills, and then they destroy the Rams.
Who knows? This is Titans, the NFL, though, so...
Titans are the weirdest team in the NFL right now. They make absolutely no sense.
Now, talking about weird teams...
The only reason why I'm not going to agree with you there is because Matthew Judon said that he doesn't like mac and cheese. And so, therefore, the New England Patriots defense... The Patriots defense, therefore, just lost all of my respect. And I really don't think that they're that good anymore.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I mean, especially when
especially
when your owner's last name is Kraft. Like, how can you say that? And then your quarterback's name is Mac.
My gosh, Judon! No! All right, we're gonna make that. We're gonna censor that name from now on.
Yep.
All right. Anyways, your quarterback is sitting behind us.
He sure is. I mainly did this just to piss Austin off.
Okay.
But I legitimately do think that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to have that great of a game.
I can see that.
He didn't look great against Seattle. He looked better against Minnesota. But at the same time, Minnesota's defense is bad. And LA's defense is actually pretty good. It's one of the best in the league. I think that Devontae Adams versus Jalen Ramsey is going to be a really good matchup. And if Jalen can just take Devontae out of the game, then I don't think that Rodgers has too many other options. Aaron Jones is going to be out of this game again. So I could just see Rodgers kind of just being meh. I don't think that he's going. It's Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think that he's going to be having a typical Aaron Rodgers game.
I think the big thing to hit on Rodgers here is going to be that offensive line lost Elton Jenkins for the season with that ACL tear, and they're not getting Bakhtiari back yet because he had a surgery. So he's not going to be back till this next week. So their offensive line is relying on guys like John Runyon and Josh Myers.
Who?
Exactly. So it's not looking good for that. Billy Turner is going to be playing too. That's a tough offensive line, especially when you're going up against Von Miller and Aaron Donald.
And Leonard Floyd.
And Leonard Floyd, yeah.
I mainly did this just to piss him off, but
there are reasons why.
There is legitimate reasons that I think that Rodgers plays a non-Rodgers-like game.
Mm-hmm. All right, on to our running backs here. I chose, a big name guy. I chose a couple big name guys this week. But Saquon Barkley going up against Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia not known for their stout defense, but Saquon, he's still coming back from that injury. They're still going to, try and play him a little bit less, and they're going to use Devontae Booker a lot more than they should because, that's how they are.
Giants suck.
And the Giants do suck. I would agree with you in that, and they're going to work a lot in the passing game. And when it comes to the passing game, they're going to look more to their tight ends and wide receivers and throwing the ball away because they're about to be sacked.
Yep.
Although they might look at Andrew Thomas again for that touchdown, though. You never know. Big man touchdowns. Either way, I don't think Saquon Barkley is going to perform as well as he will. Philadelphia looked really good last week against the Saints. I think they're going to continue doing a similar thing against the Giants. The Giants, not a great team. And Saquon, he's going to, people are expecting him to, be full strength, back to real Saquon. I don't think he's there yet. I don't think he's quite there. He's still coming back.
Yeah, I don't really think that there's too much else to add on to that. Like, Saquon he's not been good this year. I thought that he might have been able to have a bounce back season, but it's kind of apparent that I really don't. I think it's safe to say that he's like a draft bust now.
Ooh, a draft bust? Wait, what overall was he?
2.
Yeah. Okay, at 2 overall, that's...
Yeah, you're not good.
Although, again, we'll have to see what happens next year. But unless he becomes Jonathan Taylor this year...
If you keep going, if you have to keep saying, what about next year, then you're not good.
Yeah.
But speaking of Jonathan Taylor, that's my that's my disappointment player of the week. And the main reason why I say disappointment is he's coming off of one of the greatest games in NFL history.
Yeah.
So you're not going
touchdowns.
It's kind of safe to say that you're not going to live up to that, especially when you're facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense where they have
Jason
Pierre-Paul, thank you.
Yep.
Devin White, Antonio Winfield.
They have the run defense there.
Their run defense is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Taylor's still going to have a decent game, but it's going to be a disappointment compared to last week.
And compared to probably people are expecting 120 yards and a touchdown.
There's like the expectations for Jonathan Taylor after being called being put into the MVP race is absolutely insane. Like he's not going to be that good. Like yes, it was a great game, but it's not sustainable.
I definitely think he gets 70 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
I think that's very possible, and maybe he even hits 100 yards, but. Even when you're talking about that, when you're comparing it to last week, it's
going to be disappointing.
Yeah. So I could agree with you on that front. On to the wide receivers here. I'm going with Elijah Moore here now. You're looking at Elijah Moore. He had a great game last week. Can't complain about that. One of the best games from a rookie wide receiver this year, other than Jamar Chase. But Elijah Moore playing against the Houston Texans, everyone's expecting, he's going to continue this. Zach Wilson coming back, he's still got to get used to this. This is his first game back from injury, and you don't have any of those backup quarterbacks like Mike White or Joe Flacco if Zach Wilson does fail, which is very possible. But you don't have any of those guys to rely on, so I don't see Elijah Moore really becoming a big part of this game. I see it more, the check down game, throwing it to your tight ends. Ryan Griffin? Is he still on the team? Chris Herndon? Is he?
Yep.
Maybe they're going to get a little more involved. Sure. We'll have to see. I don't think this game isn't going to be good for the Jets.
No.
Offensively, I think maybe defensively you could actually see a couple stops because it's the Texans. But I think offensively you're not looking at Elijah Moore. You're looking more at Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder if they're going to get those wide receivers.
Not really too much else to add. I think that the Texans are bad, and I think that Elijah Moore is and he's coming off of a great game, so it's safe to say that I don't think that it's sustainable.
You had an absolute. I'm just reading through all of your disappointment players. You had superstars at every one of your. Oh, hey, we picked that same guy. Okay. Anyway.
Stephon Diggs. The Bills' offense is so one-dimensional; it completely relies on him, and I think that Marshawn Lattimore is going to take him out of this game. Bills are frauds. I've said that multiple times here today, and I think that Stephon Diggs, while he is a great receiver, as long as the Saints just cover him, the Bills aren't doing anything.
And I do think the Saints, Marshawn Lattimore will be able to slow him down. I don't think he's going to be able to stop him. In my personal opinion, I don't think he'll be able to stop him.
If you put Malcolm Jenkins over the top and you put Marshawn Lattimore pressing him, Strawn Payton's a decent enough defensive coach to be smart enough to do that. You're right at that point, but I still think Diggs' sideline. I also think that the Saints are going to be taking out a little bit of revenge, and they're going to be pissed off because
Minneapolis.
Because Diggs was known for the Minneapolis Miracle, and I think that New Orleans still has a hatred for Stephon Diggs.
That's a fair point too.
So I think that they're going to be playing a little bit more aggressive.
All right, our tight end here though. We picked the same guy here.
I didn't even realize that.
That's what I was saying. Yeah. Apparently, we both picked George Kittle versus Minnesota here. So George Kittle's coming to this game. He's obviously a top 5 tight end in the league right now.
No, he's not.
Is he not? In your eyes?
The dude misses 4 weeks because he has cramps.
If you take injury, when he's on the field, he is a top 5 tight end.
But he's never on the field.
But when he's on the field, and he's on the field this week.
Yeah, and he's going up against Eric Kendricks at middle linebacker.
I'm not talking about the matchup specific. I'm saying right now, when he's on the field, he's a top 5 tight end. Okay. Either way.
This is my Seattle bias coming into effect, but at the same time, George Kittle, he's good. He's not, he's never going to be 2019 George Kittle again.
I'm not saying that he is, but he's still a very good tight end.
Yeah, he's not worth the most of, he's a good tight end. He's a top 10, top 5.
I would say top 5. Obviously, you got
Kelsey's 1.
And Andrews.
Andrews 2. Waller 3.
Waller
Goddard
3.
4.
Goddard?
Kittle 5, maybe.
Okay, yeah. I would say that. Yeah. Hunter Henry's been pretty good too, but
exactly.
He only gets red zone touchdowns. So.
But, I think just to kind of add on here, he's going up against Eric Kendricks. Eric Kendricks is one of the best coverage linebackers in the league. He's probably the most underrated linebacker in the league. If you're sending Kittle deep, he's going up against Harrison Smith, one of the best safeties in the league. So I don't really think that it matters. Wherever George Kittle's going, there's going to be an absolutely insane defensive player following him.
Also, what I see is just the Niners going back to that run game that they had 2 weeks ago. It worked so well for them against the Rams, and I think that if the Niners want to do well, they're going to have to use the run game, which will, result in George Kittle not getting as many targets, not getting as many chances, and that's, not going to look well for him.
Use him in the blocking game.
That too, yeah, because he is a good blocker.
Yeah.
That's undeniable. But with that, that's going to close out our disappointment players, so let's get on into our weekly matchups. All right, and for the weekly matchups here, let's just read through the standings real quick. We got me, who is 82, 55-1, so pretty good record there on guessing games so far. Brayden, this is his first week taking these guesses here for the show. And then we'll also be reading off to you Connor Lewick, our co-host. We're going to be reading off his predictions for you. He wasn't able to be here due to conflicts right now, but either way, we'll be taking you through that so that we can make it official and bring it in for future references. First game here, we got Chicago versus Detroit. Thanksgiving at 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern. You got Chicago versus Detroit. I'm going Chicago here. Now, this is an interesting pick. At the same time, Detroit don't have a win. They don't have a win. And there's a reason behind that.
They're the best 10 team.
They have tie.
0-10-1.
Yeah.
They're the best 0-10-1 team in NFL history. Probably because they're the only 0-10-1 team in NFL history. But if they were if they were still 0-11, I'd say that they're the best 0-11 team in NFL history because they play with heart. It took the Ravens an NFL record to beat them. It took the Vikings an absolute miracle and a game-winning field goal to beat them.
Which is a miracle in itself.
They did it to the Packers again.
Which is, again, a miracle in itself.
But I think that Detroit is going to come out. I think that they're going to play their heart out. I don't think that the Bears are that good of a football team. I think this is the most winnable game for Detroit that they're going to have all season. I'm pulling for them. This pick is solely emotional. And it's a little bit like actual headspace, like actually thinking, especially with the state of the Bears right now. They don't have Allen Robinson. Matt Nagy's possibly getting fired. So I think that this is a perfect opportunity for Detroit to play their heart out once again like they have done multiple times against the Ravens, against the Vikings, against the Rams. And I think that they're actually going to be able to come in and win this game.
So Connor Lewick had also chosen Detroit with you, but my reason behind picking Chicago here is what I talked about earlier. Lighting that fire underneath the coach could be big. Matt Nagy, maybe he's playing for his job here.
I don't think that he's playing for his job. I think that he's kind of given up.
I think in a way, maybe though, you could see that. At the same time, maybe more calls go towards the offensive coordinator here. Maybe they get, more say in the game. They did pretty good, helping. I don't know who it is, but yeah, they did earlier in the season. And then also, I think opportunity comes into mind here. Andy Dalton wants to show that he's still a good backup quarterback, and he needs to be able to show that he's got it left in him. And I think that will light a fire under him specifically too. And he's going to want to not just check it down every time. He's going to want to try and throw it to Darnell Mooney, want to try and throw it to those other guys, but I think that's going to help, especially against Detroit. And they're defeated for a reason. It's not because they don't play with heart. They're defeated because they aren't good. They play with heart, but they're still not good.
They've gotten so unlucky.
You are not wrong. They have gotten unlucky. They probably should have won games, but they're still not good.
They should have, at least 2 wins.
I would agree with that. But they're still 2-7 without that. Or, 2-8-1 without that, which still is bad. So, either way, next game here we got Vegas versus Dallas later on for Thanksgiving. All three of us chose Dallas here.
Yeah.
Now Dallas is kind of the obvious pick here. Dallas has been very good. They're getting Tyron Smith back. They lost to the Chiefs, but again, the Chiefs are starting to look better and better like they probably should have.
Yeah.
So it's not that disappointing when you're looking at it that. Also, Dallas had so many injuries last week that resulted in that, and I think they're going to be getting potentially CeeDee Lamb back. They're most likely getting Tyron Smith back. And then is Randy Gregory back?
Not sure, but he might be.
That's a good question for us. Is Randy Gregory back? Because I know he got injured a little while ago. Was it? I think actually wasn't it a big injury? No.
DeMarcus Lawrence.
DeMarcus Lawrence is designated to return from IR for Thursday,
Yep.
and then Randy Gregory is eligible in week 13.
Okay, so.
So
that'll be next week.
that'll be next week.
But
so,
if they get DeMarcus Lawrence back, then the Cowboys are going to obliterate them.
Oh, yeah.
That is going
it's not even going to be close, and it's going to be a feast, a Thanksgiving feast for all Cowboys fans.
Yeah.
Probably like they're used to, unlike Detroit. Either way, next and final Thanksgiving night game, we got Buffalo versus New Orleans here. This one's going to be a fun one. Both of us chose...
No, I'm changing.
Oh, you're changing.
I'm changing.
Uh-oh.
my pick.
Uh-oh. You're changing it.
Yep.
Got to rewrite this here. So I chose Buffalo, whereas Brayden and Connor, they chose New Orleans here.
Yep.
Why?
I with everything that I've said throughout everything today, I figured that I kind of had to change my pick to New Orleans, because I do believe that the Bills are frauds. I don't think that they are as they're playing to what their record is. I think that New Orleans is going to be able to have a good enough defense to stop, as I've said multiple times, a one-dimensional offense that is solely reliant on Stephon Diggs and his production.
But the Bills' defense, though.
Yeah, let up 5 touchdowns to Jonathan Taylor.
That's because it's Jonathan Taylor. Dude is a beast.
But they still let up, 51 points?
Yes. Okay.
I don't care who you're going up against. Aaron Rodgers isn't scoring 51 points every week.
Also, Trevor Siemian, you look at him, I don't think he's that guy. He's not that guy, pal. Trust me, he's not that guy.
Stop.
I
think that he is that guy because he beat Tom Brady, and Tom Brady is not the GOAT.
He's not. He is that guy.
Yeah, he is that guy that beat Tom Brady.
All right, next game here, we got the Sunday games. Here we got Atlanta versus Jacksonville. Seems like a game that should be played in England, London.
Yeah. That should definitely just not take place on U.S. soil.
That game should be shipped over to London.
Yeah.
But
both teams have played in London this year. Thank God.
Yeah, they have. Well, Jacksonville is basically making that their home at this point.
That's fair.
So yeah, I'm going with Atlanta here. You're going with Atlanta. Connor's going with Jacksonville. Can't really, get behind that. But I'm going to Atlanta. Atlanta has at least been mediocre this season, whereas Jacksonville has just looked like hot trash all year.
I mean, Atlanta's still kind of in a playoff push almost.
I mean, yeah.
They could possibly get the 7th seed. That 7th seed is so wide open.
It's
in
crazy,
the NFC right now. And I think that Atlanta's just the better team, and Urban Meyer sucks.
I would agree with both of that. All right, next game, we got Carolina Panthers versus Miami Dolphins. We both chose Carolina, and then Connor chose Miami. Again, him splitting us. Cam Newton has looked amazing this year. Love the guy.
I love that. I love the story.
Fantasy football time. I picked him up in free agency. I hadn't had a quarterback score more than 25 points all season long. I picked him up. I started him last week, and I finally had a good quarterback game in fantasy. I swear to you, I've had 2 20-point games by a quarterback all year.
That's sad.
You expect 20-point games out of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And then I've had 2 all year. But I finally got a good performance from him, and I just love him for that reason. But also, Carolina has looked really good these past couple of games. They've kind of reverted a little bit back to... They did lose last week.
Yeah.
They did lose.
Won.
But they looked good last week. And
they looked good for the first half.
And
then Ron Rivera is just like, okay, well, now it's time to pull out my playbook because I know how to stop Cam.
Yeah.
I don't think that start is really too telling of the Panthers team, but for them to even put up 21 points was very good. I mean, the Dolphins, they're extremely hot right now. Like, they've casually won 3 games in a row. And they're kind of bringing themselves back into a picture. I mean, beating Baltimore on its own was extremely impressive in the way that they did that. But I think that Carolina is just a better team, and I think that they're
yeah.
there.
And Miami is good and all, but I don't think they're able to compete. It'll be a close game, I think, but I think
It'll be a solid.
Carolina will end up winning this one. Now, another Do we even have to talk about this game? I don't want to. All right, Jets versus Houston.
You put the
Me
Jets.
and Connor chose the Jets.
I
He
picked
chose
Houston.
Houston. Jets have okay defense.
Ty God Taylor. That's my reason.
I don't even want to talk about this
Yeah,
game. That's
all
just
right,
trash.
moving on.
All right, next game: Philadelphia versus the New York Giants here.
Again, don't want to talk about it.
We all chose Philadelphia because Philadelphia looked good last week against New Orleans, and then the New
Philly's
York.
again kind of been like Miami. They're putting it together.
Yeah,
You know, they're
they
5
are.
and 6. They've been decent, whereas the Giants are
Still the Giants.
they're a dark alleyway in New York.
I mean, I think that's what their stadium is, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, next game here we got Pittsburgh versus Cincinnati, and again we all agreed Cincinnati was the right pick here. Cincinnati has looked pretty good on offense all year long. It's only really been that defense that's been a problem, but I mean, you're looking at Pittsburgh. They're not that much of an issue on defense, except for Najee. Najee Harris is, I mean, he's great. But
He preferred sleeping on the floor.
yes, of course. The floor sleeper has been great
Yeah.
all season for them.
I think
but-
Joe Mixon destroys that defense.
Yeah.
Is TJ Watt playing?
That's a good question. I want to say that he is.
I mean,
But
he
I
didn't
could be
play
wrong.
against the Chargers, and then the Chargers put up 41 points. So
You're right.
if he's not playing, then I'm definitely going with Cincinnati. But if TJ Watt does play, then that
It could be close.
I think it'll be a close game, but I think that Burrow is a legitimate good quarterback.
It says that they expect Minka and TJ Watt back.
Okay.
So it'll be close, but I don't know for certain who's going to end up winning. Don't worry about it. Next game, we got Tampa Bay versus the Indianapolis Colts. I chose Indianapolis. Connor chose Tampa. Brayden chose Tampa. Now, I chose Indianapolis. They've looked really good these past couple of weeks. They have been putting it together. And Tampa, they're kind of just riding.
They've lost two games in a row, and they had a bye week in the middle of that. We haven't had to see a Tom Brady victory post in 3 weeks, and it's been great.
And I really hope to continue that. Tampa's kind of been on cruise control lately. They haven't really been trying.
Yeah.
Now, I hope that doesn't change this week, but I'm going with it's not, and Indianapolis is continuing their hot streak.
I don't think
But
Tom Brady's
we'll see.
physically capable of losing 3 games in a row. I think his defense and his 4 All-Pro receivers are going to have to carry him at least at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The team around him is just too good for Tampa Bay to lose that game.
Mm-hmm. Alright.
Indy's a good team. I hope that I'm wrong in this, but I don't see it happening.
I have a feeling that it's just they're going to continue on cruise control. Anyway, next game here, we got Tennessee versus New England, and we all agreed New England was the pick here. They've just been stellar, similar to the Colts recently, and Tennessee just lost to the Texans.
I still don't understand the Titans. They could definitely come out of this game and win.
They could, yeah.
50-0.
Like
they went out on what? They went out on Sunday Night Football, destroyed the Titans, and they destroyed the Rams.
Yeah.
And then they go out and then they lose to the Texans.
Texans.
Again, they make no sense. If they continue the trend of playing really good teams good and really bad teams bad, then they might win this game. But at the same time, I love what Bill Belichick has done, and I think that Mac Jones is really good.
Mm-hmm. Next game here, we got Los Angeles Chargers versus the Denver Broncos, and me and Connor chose the Chargers here, but Brayden chose the Broncos. Now, I'm going with the Chargers here for the fact that Denver still isn't going to change anything.
I think that they go to the run game with Javonte Williams, and he's going to have like 200 yards.
I think they will go to the run game a little bit more here. But again, in this case, I'm looking at the Chargers, and they put up. Their offense has been good recently. Their offense has been real good.
Defense let up 38 points to Ben Roethlisberger.
I'm not saying that it isn't, but I don't think Denver has the balls to change their offense from what it has been.
Denver's defense is underrated.
I'm not saying that it isn't. I think the Chargers' offense is very good, and Denver doesn't want to change from that Teddy Bridgewater offense that they just want to play conservatively the whole time. and it's not going to win them a game.
I think that they'll get enough big runs that they'll win.
All right, next game here, we got probably one of the biggest games. Let's be honest, this is one of the biggest games of the week. And Los Angeles Rams versus the Green Bay Packers here. I went with the Packers. This might be a little bit of bias, but again, we'll have to see. And then Connor and Brayden chose the Rams here. I went with the Packers simply because Rodgers is a good player, and he had a okay week last week against the Vikings. Again, that was expected. The Rams, though, are stumbling right now. Stafford has not looked good, and I traded for him in fantasy, and I'm planning on starting him, which means that the Rams are going to suck because I'm starting Stafford. That's how it works. So
I think the Rams win because the Rams have a really good defense, and this just seems like Rodgers and the Packers seem to just have 2 games a year where they just get blown out for no reason. It's supposed to be a good game, and then they just suck. Like this year, it was the Saints. I think that this is the other game. Last year, it was the Chargers and the 49ers.
Oh, yeah.
And then the year before that was the 49ers and the 49ers and I don't know. The Packers have random games where they get blown out every year for absolutely no apparent reason. They have at least 2 of them. They have in 2019, they did in 2020, and they've already had one this year. I think that they're due for another.
You see, they haven't done well though recently, and in that case, you're looking at a team that's stumbling. It wouldn't be out of the expectation to get blown out.
And we didn't think that the Chargers or the Saints were going to be able to beat them, and then they blew them out.
See,
it just seems like a game.
My point right here is that you're looking at this, and you could see Green Bay getting blown out. That's the reason why they're not going to get blown out, because it's a game that you aren't expecting them to get blown out that they would. Anyway, next game here, we got Minnesota versus the San Francisco 49ers. We all 3 chose Minnesota here. Their offense looked pretty good against the Packers, who have had a pretty good defense all year. Yeah. And that offense finally coming together, and the defense being okay enough. I think San Francisco is going to stick with the run here, and that's going to let them chew down the clock. But Minnesota is going to be able to fight that back, and then once it gets to that late game situation, San Francisco is going to have to, start throwing the ball, and that's going to throw them off of their game because once it gets down to that fourth quarter and it's like 6 minutes left in the game, you can't just run the ball nonstop. You can try, you'll likely lose if you do that. So you're going to try and switch things up, and in that case, I think that's where San Francisco loses this game. Minnesota takes over.
I think Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in football, and the San Francisco 49ers offense
Jamar Kupp
is a hot, steaming pile of garbage. That's about all I got to add.
Jamar or Kupp? Come on.
No.
Okay.
I think that Justin Jefferson has cemented himself as the best receiver in the league. The guy is insane.
He is insane, but Kupp. Anyway, next game here, we got Cleveland versus the Ravens. And all 3 of us still chose Baltimore here. Baltimore has looked good recently. They did lose against the Dolphins recently, and they're okay. I think they're still really good. They still have a really good record, and Cleveland is still having those problems on the team. They thought they would get rid of them when they traded Odell, but that has not been the case.
Cleveland's locker room is a mess, and the Ravens beat the Bears with Tyler... Who?
Huntley. Or was it Tyler?
I don't know. Tyler
Huntley.
Yeah. Baltimore won that game. I think that team's good. I think that their locker room's in high spirits right now. Mm-hmm. And Cleveland is not a good football team. And
also, they don't have Matt Judon anymore, who apparently doesn't like mac and cheese.
What?
Yeah.
They don't have him anymore.
All right, and finally, the Monday Night Football game here. We got Seattle Seahawks versus the Washington Redskins. I'm going with the football team here.
I don't want to watch this football game. Being a Seahawks fan is just it's just funny. All I do is laugh at their misery. I will refuse to not pick the Seahawks because I'm not going to sit here and say my team's going to lose. Yeah. Unless I'm like a Jets fan.
Or Jags.
Or Texans.
The Texans at least.
Yeah, whatever.
Don't have.
Seattle's path to victory this game is Russell Wilson does what he says, and they're going to have a great story as he posted on social media. Reality, they're probably going to shit the bed, but whatever.
Yeah, and Connor also chose Seattle, but my going with Washington here is Seattle hasn't looked great since Russell Wilson come back. And Washington has been pretty good on defense this year. Taylor Heineke's looking good. Antonio Gibson, I think, is due for a good game here. And in that case, Seattle's defense just won't be able to step up.
In reality, I think that Washington's going to win, but on a prediction sheet, I'm choosing the Hawks. I'm not. I got to go with them.
I have chosen against the Packers before, though, so.
Make no sense.
I will tell you that.
You're a bad football fan.
Anyway, that is going to close out this episode of the Full of Football podcast. So thank you so much for joining us, Brayden, tonight. And thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a comment below if you have any questions that you want us to answer. And while you're down there, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you aren't already. But without out of the way, that is going to close it up for us tonight. So have some fun over Thanksgiving. Enjoy some football, and peace.